Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the weekend edition here. And as you know, we like to give you some things to look at in the week ahead so that you are maybe equipped to either lead the discussion or get into the discussions on stuff that's going to be happening this week. And just jumping off right away, before I get to the revelation of where Donald Trump's sons have been investing over the last quarter, they had to reveal all that by a judicial order, and invested, interestingly, in stocks that you and I could be investing in today. And I think these stocks are going to go up because of this. So stay tuned for that, among other things. I just want to bring attention to a Canadian author, a professor, and this will be of interest to our U.S. friends and also those in Europe. He's got a big following on X. His name is Gad Saad, and that's not just a deliberate rhyme. It's G-A-D, and his last name is S-A-A-D. And he's becoming very well known internationally. And what he's talking about, he's got a book out that talks about suicidal empathy. Suicidal empathy, dying to be kind. Dying to be kind. And what he talks about is this trend, not just in psychoanalytic thought, but it's prevailing in legal decisions and political decisions. It's all about empathy. The most important quality, he says, that the media are looking for and are pounding politicians if they don't show it is empathy. And he says it's suicidal if we take it too far. And that means you feel so sorry, let's say, for a violent, criminal breaking, human killing immigrant. And so if you are overwhelmed by empathy, you would be thinking, well, we can't send that person back to his other country because some bad things might happen to him. Or you could get some of the rulings that more and more we see political parties and leaders saying, we've been too soft on the poor people on the street and the drug epidemic and the crime on the street and people dying. And we need to be able to pick people up and get them into facilities where they can dry out. We need to stop the free giving out of drugs and needles. And when you talk about that, it says you're lacking empathy. And for the last decade or couple decades, any politicians who are seen to be lacking empathy have a tough time getting elected. That's all starting to change, and it's been done by the research and the thought leading of people like Gad Saad. So you might want to watch that development. The other development that's gripping, and to our UK friends, and those of you in Canada and the US, you can be knowledgeable on this because, of course, the leader of the Labour Party, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is having trouble within his own group because he keeps losing, or Labour keeps losing elections. And we talked about it. We predicted, actually, as regular watchers here will know, that Labour would lose in the municipal and regional elections that were sweeping across the UK, and they lost badly. So, of course, the Prime Minister now is in trouble. And from within, 40-year-old, kind of a rising star, they call him, the Health Minister, is really looming as possibly, his name is Wes Streeting, as maybe the lead contender. He's was facing a bit of interest because he talks about the fact that his grandfather was an armed robber and involved with notorious London gangsters, the Cray brothers, way back. So that's getting him some interest. He's openly gay. That doesn't seem to be a factor anymore in politics, but he is. And so he is sort of seen as a front runner. But the former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, keep an eye on her. She's had a bit of a rebound in politics. She ran into some trouble a while ago because she was accused of a tax problem that forced her actually to leave government. And she was associated with claiming stuff on her taxes that she shouldn't have been. But she's bounced back. She's very well liked. So watch for her, and watch for Andy Burnham. He's mayor of Greater Manchester. And of course, big city mayors usually have a big following. He's fairly popular. He's more to the left than Wes is. So let's see where it goes. Interesting stuff boiling up there. We'll see how long Starmer can hang on. Starmer says he's not going to be leaving. My prediction is he will. Will it be this week? I don't know, but you'll be armed with a discussion to talk about other people who are running. Well, the future of Natalie Decker. Now, Natalie Decker is an amazing NASCAR race driver, one of the few women who's very successful in the sport. Doesn't hurt at all that she's Hollywood gorgeous, but a tremendously skilled driver. She actually bailed out of a race in Dover, and this is a truck race But of course, the trucks they race there they don't look, they look on the outside a little bit like pickup trucks, but they're absolutely fired up to go do laps at the speed of light. She parked her truck and was furious and quit the race, and actually burst into tears and said she's more disappointed with herself actually than anybody else. And so that's getting a lot of criticism, because NASCAR drivers are saying you don't cry in NASCAR, you don't cry in car racing. But other car racers, men, are coming to her defense, saying actually they do cry. They just don't cry in public. They lose a race, they maybe go into the washroom or get into the back of the locker room, and that's where they do their crying. So people are really saying she's really let down the sport by cracking like this. Let's see what happens. Anyway, our thoughts go out to her. No fun. That's a high-speed, high-risk sport. And Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York City, of course, as we know, and former governor of New York, and as he was on his deathbed, this was reported, severe case of viral pneumonia. He was in a coma in early May, and now he claims to have had a spiritual vision of some sorts while he was in a coma, and he's going to be talking about that, so stay tuned for that. I know Mayor Giuliani. I had the honor of being right after those terrible attacks, not the 9/11 attacks that destroyed the Twin Towers in New York and so many people being killed. And it was about a week after that, I had the honor of being, the very sober honor of being led through the burning rubble that was still burning. Went through there with our prime minister at the time, guided through by Rudy Giuliani, so we could see the depths and the breadth of the horrific destruction that had taken place there. So Mayor Rudy Giuliani going to be talking about the spiritual vision that he had while he was in a coma. We're all hoping, people around the world are kind of hoping, following Trump's trip to China, that there be some news about Jimmy Lai being released. Jimmy Lai is a very famous, obviously, Chinese entrepreneur, billionaire, and never backed down, even while he was living in Hong Kong, never backed down from criticizing the government. That, of course, eventually got him arrested, not elected. And the concerns are that he will die in jail. His daughter, Jimmy's daughter, Claire Lai, in the U.S., was really expressing hopes that the Trump trip to China and meeting with President Xi would result in her dad being released. And it has not happened yet. There was no promise of it yet. President Trump says he raised the issue, but we don't know what's happening. Just jumping back to motorsports for a second and car racing, May 24th coming up, that's a big day for racing. And some of you might be saying, why are we talking about race car? It is the most watched and the biggest and most supported sport in the United States, and of course very popular in Europe also. So though you might not be a fan, millions and millions are. Big weekend coming up. You got the Indianapolis 500, you got the Coca-Cola 600, and you got a Formula One in Montreal. There's an interesting twist coming up on the Formula One race in Montreal, because the strippers in Montreal, of who there are thousands and quite famous, are going to be going on strike during the Grand Prix in Montreal coming up for the May 24th. And they say it's because they are treated as private contractors and they want to be treated as employees so that they will have more benefits. And the Grand Prix folks are worried that this is going to dampen the enthusiasm from the Grand Prix. I wasn't aware that people who are watching cars go round and round a track are also interested in watching other things go round and round. But they say the Sex Workers Anonymous Committee, known as SWAC, is really hoping that this strike will bring to the attention the cause and concerns of strippers in Montreal during the Grand Prix. Well, if you want to talk about AI, and I'm going to talk in a minute about the increased, there's pushback continually about AI, that it's going to cost billions of jobs, that AI will eventually take over us, and in fact, the robots will wind up killing us. All kinds of concern about AI. Personally, I think the bottom line is, properly managed, AI is going to be a continued benefit to humankind, just as any breakthroughs down through history. The discovery of fire, as we talk about, was seen by some people as a bad thing because some people are going to be burned in forests and houses can burn down. That's all true, but the offset to that, the heat and the energy that it was able to produce. Of course, we are all beneficiaries of that. Anyway, we're going to see what happens as the AI debate goes on. But one place it's not being debated right now, in Japan, especially in some of the northern forested areas, I don't know if you realize that there's been such a some of the stories on this. We've covered it to a bit, but the number of species around the world of all types of animals and fish life and birds, number of species that are rebounding, the number of new species that continue to be discovered is really quite dramatic. Media doesn't like to talk about it because, of course, mainstream media wants us all to think we're all about to die in an environmental a collapse of some kind. But the return of bears and bear attacks in Japan, believe it or not, over the last several years has been a real concern. And so a company by the name of Monster Wolf has used AI to develop, it's a $4,000 robot with sensors and sound effects that are designed to make it sound like a monster wolf, like a demon wolf. And they can guide it through the forest to scare off bear, and especially from areas where there are people and tourists going around. So Monster Wolf, AI robot wolf scaring off the bears. We'll see if Canada brings those in, because Canada does have a bit of a situation with bears. We'll see where that goes. Well, the reason I personally have some concern that if AI gets shut down, not just by people who are concerned that AI is going to destroy the world, but because the data centers that are required the power that's required to run those data centers, of course, are huge. I believe personally that could lead to small, clean, nuclear-powered operations just large enough to run a data center, and we could resolve that problem. But among Gen Z, it's huge. At the university campuses, the pushback against AI, the demand to just shut it down. Just yesterday at the University of Central Florida, their commencement speaker, the valedictorian, Gloria Caulfield, she got booed by the students there when she was talking about the great possible benefits, the great benefits that are there for all of us for AI, and they almost booed her off the stage. Now, I don't think that's just a one-off. I think it's because you do have most universities are controlled academically, of course, by culturally Marxist professors, and they are the ones who hate anything to do with productivity, anything to do with people becoming wealthy because of their discoveries, anything to do with benefits in the marketplace. And so it's largely the academic community that is telling Gen Z that AI is a dangerous thing. We're going to see what develops. Keep an eye on that battle as it wears on. Well, you may be aware that there was a recent ruling that said the Trump family, notably the Trump boys, son and son-in-law, had to reveal all of their past investments for the last quarter of a year, and they're going to have to do this regularly. So it's the first time that we get to see where have the Trump kids been investing, and when the Trump family kids been investing. So very interesting. They made about 3,700 different investments over the last quarter. That's, to some might think that's a lot, but for big investors, that's not. And it shows they invested in NVIDIA, the chip maker. I guess that's understandable. Invested in Microsoft, also understandable, and in Boeing. So they're getting a bit of criticism there because Boeing has contracts with the government, of course. They invested in Costco. Big investments from the Trump kids in Costco, and also AT&T. And you like shopping at Dollar Store? The discount Dollar Tree, they invested about $1 million in Dollar Tree. So I predict over the week ahead, you're going to see a ton of people investing in those areas because they're going to be thinking, if the Trump family kids are investing there, they must know something, so they're going to jump in too. Let's see if that does take place. Well, there is an amazing situation going on in Kentucky right now. There's a Republican primary election. This is to see who's going to be the Republican candidate. It's coming up on the 19th of May, very quickly here. And what's happening there is you've got Thomas Massie, who is the incumbent. He's the present Republican holder there. He has voted consistently against the president, against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, of course, has been furious with him over the last period of time and saying he's a loser and saying he needs to be challenged. And so there is a challenger. The gentleman who's challenging, a guy by the name of Ed Gulrain. This guy's a former U.S. Navy SEAL. And he's got the support of Trump. Now, what's interesting here, millions and millions of dollars are pouring in from all over to support the challenger, Ed Galbraith, because Thomas Massie is very anti-Trump, even though he's a Republican. So the big question, and they're running neck and neck, the big question is, can millions of dollars overwhelm local support? Because Massie himself is very popular in his own state. And are people going to see this as a buyout? But they're all Republicans, so quite a battle going on in the Republican family. So watch for that and think about who you think is going to win that, coming up on the 19th, very soon here. Well, do you like watching American Idol? If you do, you probably also like watching Eurovision. That's the equivalent, and it's huge in Europe. That music contest is huge right now, and it's coming up, so watch for that. The favored there has become to the finals, a rapper by the name of Satoshi, and the song Viva Moldova. And Moldova, of course, is a country that used to be pretty well stuck in kind of the Russian orbit, the Russian influence of thing, and has broken away from Putin. And his song, or that rapper's song, has launched him, that people think, into first place. So watch for that. There's also from Greece, the artist by the name of Akaila. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. We'll see if that song goes. And the huge controversy, of course, is a number of countries have pulled out of that as a boycott because Israel is in that contest, as they well should be. Israel, as in almost all areas, whether it's business or military or education or entertainment, Israel is a top contestant, and many countries insanely boycotting Israel. It's completely crazy. But we'll see what happens. So keep an eye on Eurovision. It's going to be a big few days coming up. Always controversial with Eurovision. Some of our Canadian fans remember way back as far as 1988, Celine Dion competed there, but she competed for Switzerland. So it's Eurovision, always an area of controversy. Well, the Pentagon and President Trump has been warning Europe and a number of countries in Europe that if they're not going to help to open up the Strait of Hormuz so that world trade and traffic can go through there, then maybe the U.S. isn't going to help them with their protections against Russia that have been in place since the Second World War. And they've announced they're going to draw down thousands of troops, not just Germany, but also Poland. And they're saying, look, if you can't, it's saying to European countries, and I think they've got some good reason here, if you aren't willing to pull together and open up a strait that's controlled by the most radical terrorists in the world, the Iranian regime, then why should we be supporting you? So let's see where that goes. I would think that President Putin in Russia will be looking with some satisfaction at the fact that there might be less U.S. troops in Europe. Let's see where all of that goes. Mind you, talking about what's going on in Israel, Israel has just claimed to have killed the top leader of Hamas. They've tried to get this guy for a while. His name is Ezzedine Haddad, and top military chief in Gaza. They got him. They said they would. We'll see if that has any effect or not in terms of Hamas. As just recalling, remember, they do not want a two-state solution. They want their written constitution that says they are required to kill all Jews all the time, everywhere, and to annihilate, to vaporize the state of Israel. So we'll see where that goes. After Trump got back, just within hours from China, it was determined that he didn't get a really strong commitment from President Xi in China to support relative to the Strait of Hormuz and Strait of Hormuz. And so the previous gains that were made in the stock market, we talked about it, you've heard it first here. We talked about that was going to be a reality as it looked like things were coming together. And but I've always said, if things look like they're getting frayed and fractious in terms of Iran with not the huge support Trump is hoping for, then it's going to affect the stock markets negatively. It has. Stocks and bonds had a big sell-off within hours, actually, of the meeting, while Trump and Xi were still talking about what a wonderful meeting they had had. The stock markets perceived that there wasn't big agreement on these other items, and so we see stocks dropping and oil bouncing back up to over $109 an hour. So look for some more ongoing turbulence there. Well, Canada's Governor General has just stripped two of Canada's better-known citizen of the Order of Canada. These are reputed to be a very high citizen honor for all kinds of wonderful things. Two of them, Peter Daglish and also James Lemaire, were stripped of their Order of Canada. Back in 2019, Peter Daglish, he was actually convicted in Nepal and sentenced to 16 years in prison. He was found guilty of sexually assaulting young boys while he was in Nepal. And while he was there, he had I don't know if people knew that Daglish was gay or not, and it's not a factor, but he was operating and very significantly involved in programs for homeless youth and setting up shelters for homeless youth. And tragically, for the youth involved, looks like when he was in Nepal, he was at some of those shelters. Anyway, as we know, it was a matter of fact, he was sentenced to 16 years in prison for his sexual activity with boys as young as 11, and now he's been stripped of the Order of Canada. And Jacques Lemaire, kind of a popular guy, he went on to become executive officer of the giant SNC-Lavalin. It's a giant Canadian engineering company, always been said to have close ties to the Liberal government. He had an Order of Canada, and he has been stripped of that because there'd been a lot of looking. It takes the Order of Canada a long time to research these things, even after they've been public. But what he was accused of was paying millions of dollars to the son of Gaddafi from Libya. If you remember the former Libyan dictator Gaddafi, his son Saad Gaddafi received millions of dollars through Lemaire, through SNC-Lavalin. I have met the son of Gaddafi. I've had a meeting with him. Didn't know a lot about him. Interesting guy. That's all I'll say. Well, the hantavirus thing, watch for that continue. This is this breakout of the virus, originally starting from the cruise ship. We were among the first right here to talk about the fact that it got onto the ship because of some kind of lunatic cruisers who went off the ship and they wanted to watch birds, so they went wandering through one of the biggest dumps in that country, which is, of course, infested with rats, and probably brought the virus itself with rat feces back onto the boat with their shoes. Anyway, we're going to see that continue. But I think even more compelling, 80 deaths now being reported in Congo with another outbreak of the Ebola outbreak. You know, we should be using AI and all of its predictive capabilities to find out why the Congo, why these, it's very heartbreaking, sad, these huge outbreaks, deadly Ebola. I think that's going to be even more watched and more deadly than hantavirus. Well, back in Canada, two things happening at two universities, one in Canada, one in the U.S. Jacob Shelley is a professor at Western University, and 300 students are relying on their graduation to have tests marked, and this is in the area of a health law course. He says he's not going to mark any of them because he has detected so many of them cheated on the test. Of the 300 students, he said it's overwhelming. They were using AI to cheat, and a bit of a standoff there. But that goes along with Princeton University just announced they've had a 133-year-old code of ethics where students would go into the exam room to write the test, and because of an honor code, there would never be a supervisor in the room. And they found at Princeton over the last few years, cheating is so widespread that they canceled their honor code of 133 years old, and now they have supervisors in the room. And now here we have a similar thing, students using AI to cheat. Well, that can also all seem kind of negative as we look at the week ahead for you. But tomorrow for Sunday, you want to be watching, and as it moves in the year, all through the year ahead, as you know, it's the 250th anniversary of the United States in terms of their Declaration of Independence, and President Trump had declared Rededicate 250. And that's a prayer event that's going to be taking on the National Mall with of course, the statues of Abraham Lincoln at one end of those, and Thomas and Jefferson's famous area of recognition history-wise at the other end of the mall. And Bishop Robert Barron is well-known Catholic communicator, very well-known. I've listened to some of his stuff, really good stuff. He's going to be talking about what happens to societies when they marginalize God, or when religion is sort of set off to the side, compartmentalized, or even frowned upon and diminished. And so watch for that. It's going to be a big speech along with others. And we're going to get a chance. We'll see in the year ahead. The Bible talks a lot about what happens when countries or a significant portion of the citizens dedicate themselves to God, that historically has seemed to have positive effects in the country itself. Watch for that tomorrow. A great week ahead, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.